Welcome, everybody, to the Nature Towns and Cities Accreditation Scheme launch. My name's Victoria Bradford Keegan. I'm from the Nature Towns and Cities programme. Thank you all for joining us today to learn more about the accreditation scheme. We've got quite a few people still joining, so whilst that happens, we'd just love to hear where you're joining from us today. If you in the chat, you can put it in the chat, or you can put it on the word cloud that hopefully you can see in front of you by clicking on the Mentimeter link in the chat, or going to Menti and entering the code, which is also in the chat as well. Um, yeah, it's lovely to see. Oh, I'd love to see you. Lovely to see so many people joining. I can't see your faces, sadly, but it's great. We're almost at 100. So we'll get going with a little bit of the housekeeping because we've got quite a packed agenda today. So um, first of all, this is Zoom. I know lots of people are relatively familiar with Zoom. If you aren't, spend a little time looking at all the icons along the bottom so that you know what you can do. In particular, have a look at the chat and the Q&A function, because we'll be using those today, where we'll be sharing links, which will happen in the chat, and at the end of the session we will also have opportunity for Q&A. Please, if you've got questions that are about kind of how things are appearing or your connection or anything like that, please use the chat. If you've got a question for the panelists at the end of the session today, could you put that in the Q&A for us? That will just enable us to separate these two things out and try and get questions for the panel answered. We have got automatic captioning today, so you'll be able to benefit from that, and or also see the full transcript as well if you click on the links at the bottom, in particular the caption link. You'll be able to turn on both captioning and also the transcript, which appears in a pop-out on the side if you would like to use that. I think with currently just shy of 120 people on the call, we will get going. So for another couple of minutes, you'll hear from me, and then I'll introduce our other panelists shortly. So, as a bit of, hopefully by way of a bit of a recap, Nature, Towns and Cities is a programme founded by National Trust, Natural England and National Lottery Heritage Fund, working closely with Nature Scot, Natural Resources Wales and the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. And it's all about helping places, towns and cities across the whole of the UK to deliver to greener, fairer, healthier and better connected towns and cities, and to enable more people, to millions more people, to spend time outside in nature rich green spaces, nature rich towns and cities really close to home. Overall, we're all about supporting people to be able to enjoy that time outdoors. We Over the next 10 years, we want to help 100 towns and cities to uh, radically change access to green space in their town and city, and to improve the green infrastructure, urban green infrastructure. In doing so, we think that by putting green space at the heart of placemaking, we think that that will also help to address some of the challenges facing towns and cities in the UK in the 21st century, whether that's addressing health inequalities, creating more climate resilient cities, and also helping places to become thriving, prosperous places. Um, as part of the programme, we want to unlock further investment, and the accreditation scheme is a key part of that. You'll hear a bit more about that as we go on. That funding is really about helping places to deliver their ambition, their shared ambition with councils, communities, and delivering that together. Overall, with Nature Towns and Cities, we would love you all to participate in this way, but also in other ways. So, in the autumn last year, when we first started, we first introduced it to you. We invited you to join in and to shape it and to help lead for change in your place. We really mean that. We'd love to hear from you again, and please do have a look at the website to find out the opportunities to get involved with the program. Um, As you'll see on the screen, there's a few other people you're going to hear from today. Shortly, I'll be handing over to Emily Boyd, who is the lead for accreditation for nature towns and cities. Slightly later on, you'll hear from Jana Bullis from Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council, who'll be talking about their approach to accreditation. And then on the panel, at the end of the session, you'll also have the opportunity to hear from Andrew Burford, who's Principal Advisor in Green Finance and Investment for the programme, and Drew Benellic, who's the Head of Landsea and Nature Policy from Heritage Fund, and will be here to be able to give a grant perspective on the accreditation and answer any grant-related questions that you might have. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Emily.
Thanks, Victoria. So I'm Emily Boyd. I'm a senior officer in the Connecting People with Nature team and technically work for Natural England, but work on the Nature Towns and Cities programme and have been developing the accreditation scheme for the last year or so. So very proud to announce that it is now live. The full criteria can be found on the website. I hope it will be posted in the chat shortly, but there is an accreditation webpage now live on the Nature Towns and Cities website. So partnerships, local authorities and their partners will be able to apply for their town or city to become accredited as a nature town, a nature city or a nature borough from late March 2025. So you'll have a bit of time now to kind of digest what's in there, what the criteria says, how you might be able to evidence those things from your place, and prepare for when it launches for applications in March. So we will run another webinar in March, and we'll let you know when that date is agreed. But that will be all about kind of how you actually apply, how you navigate the portal to upload your evidence, and the more technical side. But it is free to apply, so there's no fee involved, and it's open to all places in England at the moment. So we're piloting it in England only for the time being. And it's open to all urban areas. So there's no defined size that your town, city, or borough has to be, or population size, so long as you identify as an urban area. Those are the places that we want to incentivize this kind of real ambitious change, because that's where the majority of people live, work, and play. So how does it help towns and cities? The accreditation is there to really strengthen and formalize some of your existing partnerships and maybe bring in some new partnerships. So you'll be able to work under one shared vision, which is becoming a nature town or city, or retaining that nature town or city status. It is there to demonstrate that a place has the right foundations in place, so to deliver that really at scale transformational change. And the kinds of foundations are laid out in the foundation stage, which is level 1 of the accreditation. So I'll talk in a bit more detail about that in a few minutes. It's there to benchmark best practice and allow you to see how your place is progressing through to kind of what outcomes you desire for your town or city. It's there to provide external recognition, so for the work that you're already doing or the work that you're planning to do, and really to boost that urban nature agenda, both internally with your senior sponsors and champions and externally bringing in new partners, might be the private sector, might be the voluntary sector, and really having a place-based attitude towards change for urban nature in your area. As Victoria said, it's also there to provide assurance to potential investors and funders that your town or city is a good investment or funding opportunity. So by the stage where a town or city becomes fully accredited, the place will have things in there about their business case, overall funding and investment. They'll have kind of a pipeline of investable projects and their operational model and funding kind of blended finance model in mind and ready to go out for funding and investment. And it also repositions green infrastructure, as vital for the long-term success and resilience of a town or city. So we know that towns and cities are going to grow in population and be the most hard hit by climate issues in the future. So it's about building that resilience in now for the long-term success for generations to come. Next slide, please. So this is the overall picture of what's involved. There are two levels. Level 1 is the foundation stage and level 2 is the more advanced stage. Level 1 is a prerequisite to level 2. So if you're looking at the things under level 1 and thinking, we've already got lots of evidence of those things, you would need to evidence those things before you move on to level 2. So the full criteria are available now. I'm not going to put the whole list on screen because we'd be here all day, but it's on the website naturetownsandcities.org.uk/accreditation. But these are the kind of the overview of what that looks like. So under level 1 is a focus on setting your vision. So bringing partners and stakeholders together, creating that really coherent and clear, ambitious vision for the future of the place. So you might already have kind of separate visions in different places, and this might be an opportunity to bring those together, do some reflection, reflect on how ambitious you're really being, and kind of rethink what that might be. Building strong partnerships. So we know lots of places are already working in existing partnerships, or you may want to create some new partnerships with a broader range of stakeholders. So bringing in people from different departments, different government agencies, private sector, voluntary sector, to really add some capacity into this agenda and more resilience really for the future of it, and spread the responsibility for the change. So that's really about creating the vision and bringing it to life through that partnership. And writing your GI strategy and improvement plan. So the kind of last milestone on achieving foundation is having your GI strategy in place. So a strategic plan to improve green and blue infrastructure in your area. So how you're actually going to take your vision and move into delivery. And then level 2 has a bit more of a finance focus. So it's about developing your projects, so moving that strategy and vision into delivery. So thinking about developing a detailed pipeline of investable projects. So some might be partly costed or fully costed by the time you've got to that stage. And it should also kind of link back to your strategy. So thinking about where the gaps are in your town or city and really responding to need both for people, nature and climate in the projects that you prioritise. Creating your business case for funding or investment. So making the case for overall investment in your place, which will enable you to deliver those projects. Apologies, some of the writing's got a bit overlapped there, but the last one is developing your operating model and financial planning. So how are you going to deliver all of this? Kind of developing your target operating model to deliver and manage this change. So taking quite a long-term view over the next decade, how are you going to partner with and empower communities? And what's your proposed blended finance model to fund some of this change? Next slide, please. So this is a picture of what the evidence might look like. So when you come to apply, you will log into an online portal and upload evidence of your work to support the criteria. So we're not looking for brand new shiny things to be written specifically for the accreditation. We want to see existing work and new work. It's a way of demonstrating work that's already done and work that you've done to meet this criteria as well. So there's some suggestions in here of the kinds of evidence you might want to submit, and we'd be looking to assess, but it is quite flexible. So if things have different names, if things are in various different places in several documents, videos, photos, workshop write-ups, things like that, you can upload all of those things and write a short kind of commentary against it, showing us where to look for your evidence of how you've met the criteria. You might have one overarching piece of evidence, you might have several different ones. So the portal will allow you to upload lots of different formats and lots of different pieces of evidence. So that's level 1. And then if we go on to the next slide, please. Level 2 is similar. So we're just looking for evidence of how you've met that criteria in however you can demonstrate it. So it might be a pipeline of projects, it might be your overall target operating model or your blended finance model. It might be plans to empower local communities, or a view of your long-term financial plan and cash flow forecast, and it might be your overall business case or funding and investment strategy. So there's lots of suggestions in there. This is all on the website as well. But as I say, we're quite flexible to different places, contexts in terms of what they choose to submit. Next slide, please. So what support will be available to help you through this? So there's going to be lots of learning resources and tools and templates and case studies on the website. There's going to be group learning and peer mentoring launched later in the year. Regular themed webinars like this and some of the network webinars that you may have attended last year on certain topics like health and green infrastructure and communities and finance. And there's also going to be some monthly online accreditation surgeries. So that'll be your opportunity to come and ask specific questions about the accreditation, about your place and how you think you may or may not have met the criteria. And also a chance to troubleshoot with each other. So you might be particularly stuck on vision setting, and someone from a different local authority or a different partnership can help you through that challenge based on their experience. There's the capacity building grant. So some places will be successful in that, but hopefully there will be enough support available through the rest of the programme to enable places to reach accreditation, even if they're unsuccessful in the grant. So hopefully lots of you are signed up to the newsletter already, but all the latest information about all of those areas of support and when the next webinar on this will go out via the newsletter. And before I move on to the self-evaluation tool, just to mention a little bit about how this is going to be assessed. So it's via the portal. You'll apply via the portal and upload your evidence and notes, and then a team of assessors from Natural England and National Trust will assess your evidence against the criteria, and their recommendation will go to a decision-making panel made up of external panelists. There is no maximum number of times you can apply. It can be quite an iterative process. If you submit some evidence and the assessors choose to ask you for further evidence before it goes to panel, so you don't get one shot at it, you can keep uploading things and resubmitting as many times as you like. I think that's all on the accreditation itself. And then I will move on to talk about the self-evaluation tool. Next slide, please. So the self-evaluation tool has been designed to help places right at the beginning of their journey towards accreditation. So it doesn't form part of the assessment. It is for yourselves to use to kind of get a really good picture of where you are currently at, what your areas of strength are and what your areas for improvement are, and how you might want to prioritize those in terms of your work. So it's an interactive tool. It's available on the website now as an Excel download and as a PDF download. It is being developed into a kind of automated interactive online tool for when the full website launches in March. But in the meantime, it is on there in those two formats for you to use. So it's there to help you assess your readiness to lead for change. So how ready you are to take really ambitious place-wide action. So you can see the themes on the right-hand side. Those are the kinds of themes that questions are asked against. So it's optional. It's not formally assessed. It's really there to help you kind of begin those conversations with your partners. So it's got a section on there that asks you about quantitative metrics. So we point you towards the green infrastructure mapping database and the tree equity score tool. to give kind of a visual and a quantitative view of how well your place is currently doing in terms of access to green infrastructure. And then there's a suite of multiple choice questions alongside these qualitative themes and a framework for a reflective session. So you should, at the end of using the tool, have a really clear kind of partnership view of how well your place is currently doing, and what you might want to prioritize. Um, so you will get a kind of star map as is shown on the right hand side. So this one is just a dummy mock-up, but it shows that this place is really strong in terms of leadership and finances and partnership, but it may want to focus on delivery planning and maintenance, policy and strategy and skills. So it's just a visual representation of how well you've ranked yourself alongside these themes. So that's there to encourage you to start on your journey, and do a little bit of self-reflection, and to facilitate some of those partner conversations. So you might want to bring some partners together on a Teams or a Zoom call, and someone share their screen and work through this tool together, and you can come back to it and save your evaluation down for a later date. And we also encourage you to start this now and kind of provide yourselves with a baseline, so you can come back to it in 6 months or a year's time and see how you might have progressed and made some progress on some of these themes. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot on the right hand side of what it actually looks like on the Excel version. So this is the first theme, which is about leadership. So there's 3 questions. It's kind of, how would you evaluate your current level of ambition, or whether you have a senior leader that is an active sponsor of this kind of agenda, and how would you rate your long-term thinking for GI in your urban area. So you would rate yourselves with the drop downs. If you were to answer A, B, C, or D, you would enter that in the right hand side, and that gives you an overall total for leadership, and that would then populate the answer diagram. So it's hopefully quite self-explanatory. There's a guidance tab in there, and it's also available for PDF if you want to download that and send it around to some of your partners. And as I say, it is being developed into an interactive online tool, which will be ready in spring. Thank you. I will pass on to Jana, who is from BCP, and she has been part of the co-design group that has helped develop this in the last year or so. And also just to say a big thank you to anyone on the call. I've seen a few names pop up who helped us test this at the latter end of last year. So it has been through very vigorous testing with a group of local authorities, voluntary sector organisations, some academics and some other government agencies before we launched it. Thank you very much. I'll be back at the end to answer any questions. I'll hand over to Jana.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Jana Blois. I am a project manager in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council. I've been involved in our Future Parks project, which was a forerunner to the Nature Towns and Cities, since 2019. So it's been a really great project to be involved in, and I'd encourage anybody to get involved. One of the major work streams that we worked on pretty early on was our green infrastructure strategy. And I raise that because one of the delivery principles we were helped in developing was to champion green infrastructure across our organisation and with all the different people that we worked with, the different stakeholders. And that's, we didn't realise, I think, at the time how valuable that was and has become. And I think I see Nature Towns and Cities as just helping us with that. So that's really going out to all the different teams and councillors, your highways teams, your housing teams, leadership, funders, developers, comms teams, ground maintenance teams, health, education, and large private landowners, to encourage them to sort of any decisions that they take to look at them through a nature lens, and they have to look at them through all sorts of different lenses. So it's understanding the different pressures that all those different teams have, but encouraging them that nature is a really valuable one to include in that list. So the other day there was a housing repair, and it was encouraging them to include a Swift box in their thinking. With our grounds maintenance teams, that's doing training around regenerative tree growth or understanding the benefits of a more relaxed mowing regime. Um, in so many services, there will be a way that each of the things that they do can be looked at in a progressive and nature friendly way. And I suppose what we're looking for is that championing good green infrastructure will make the person in charge of that bit of the puzzle think in a better way, forget the tarmac, maybe forget the plastic grass or the chemical pesticide, and put a native plant in instead. I think Nature Towns and Cities is sort of championing those things at a national level. And by becoming involved, we're showing our intent to neighbours and central government around that. If you could go on to the next slide, please. So we looked at why, or I tried to think about why accreditation was important to us, and we've gone through the tools, and I think it's difficult to know, isn't it? Is accreditation important because of the label that we'll all get to put on our signatures and our websites and things like that, or is it important that the steps that we've gone through to that the accreditation framework suggests? And of course, it's both of those things. Um, the foundation level, the steps that Emily's gone through there, and understanding your place, the stakeholders that you're involved with, creating a plan for improvement is a really solid place for any green space team to start. Gives you kind of a list to work to, and sometimes that's really important. For us, that was mapping what we have, talking to our residents and auditing all of our green spaces, working out, did we know what our green spaces were, where they were, how big they are, and what state they were in. Working with our partners to understand their priorities, our priorities, important things locally, habitats, shortages, and planning the way ahead. And like I said before, that's all kind of part of that green infrastructure strategic work. I think being involved in future parks, but the accreditation framework encourages developing a really strong strategic base. And my manager has said a couple of times lately, we're a bit in strategic fatigue here because we have quite concentrated on that, but it's really coming to fruition now. So that's our local nature recovery strategy on the go, which we're not actually leading on. Our colleagues in Dorset are, but is a really important overarching piece of work. Our local plan, our green infrastructure strategy. We've developed an urban forest strategy and an urban greening design guide most recently, and a plan for play. They're not always the most thrilling, they're long documents. I'm not suggesting everyone goes off and reads those, but I think what we've realized lately is we're coming to the end of that journey now of developing those strategies, and now we're getting the fruits of that labor. So when we're bidding for SIL, we've got our tree equity scores that we can fall back on as our evidence-based. And we know that our communities that are more poorly served for green infrastructure, and where we might want to prioritise our limited resource. So that strategic base is really important. I've gone quite quickly, but my last point would be to mention that when we went through the accreditation questions, we found them quite a straightforward process to do and to think through. If you can get the right people in the room, just a few hours to work through the questions that the accreditation is asking. Perhaps I would suggest we go on to the next slide and show the workbook. We looked through that to see, what do we have in place now? What work would we need to do? What documents did we have that would be evidence? And what queries, and kind of, what was the extra work and time that would be taken or need to be taken in order to achieve that level of accreditation. So I would encourage those of you, that it's a straightforward process, it's a valuable process, and the steps that we've gone through to look at where we are in that journey haven't been onerous. Okay, well, I've been super good and gone super quickly, so I'm afraid we're a little bit ahead of time, but I hope that's okay with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Jana, and thanks, Emily, as well. I'm just going to do a bit of a recap and explain some of the next steps now, which gives you a little bit more time to put your questions in the chat if you would like. So, sorry, in the Q&A, not in the chat. And then we'll come to those in a minute, including inviting our panelists to join. But before that, I just wanted to recap some of the things that Emily and Jana has said. So at the moment, we've published the criteria so that you can familiarize yourself with the criteria, what is required, and start using some of the self-evaluation tool or the uh, tracker that Jana just outlined, and start thinking about your approach to accreditation. In March, you will be able to submit an application for the accreditation, and it will be able to be assessed. Um, to support that, we'll also be holding a second webinar. We'll recap on some of this information, but also talk about that application process. We don't yet have a date for that, but it will be in March. And so keep an eye on the Nature Towns and Cities website. If you haven't signed up to the mailing list, please could you do that, because that's how we'll let you know. So that's the best thing to do. Um, but in the meantime, you can start thinking about your strengths and weaknesses by using the self-evaluation tool, and thinking about your readiness to deliver and lead for change in your town or city. And you can start to think about how you might what evidence you might submit in response to the criteria, where you might need to still to do work. And that's where the kind of tracker document that Jana just shared with you might be useful. That's also available alongside the self-evaluation tool on the Nature Towns and Cities website, and the link to that's in the chat. Have some conversations with partners who will be helping you to submit evidence, or might own some of the evidence themselves. They may be the authors of particular documents, or might help you to add additional notes that would accompany documents. And have a think about what you would like to put in your application, and potentially think about any gaps that you might need to fill before March, so that you can be starting to apply as soon as that function is available. As Emily mentioned, we will be having monthly drop-in support sessions for people who are seeking to apply, and alongside that, we will also, and you can find out more about this later on in the year, but as a program, we will be providing opportunities for further learning, further group-based support to enable people to make progress with some of their asks here. You may not need it, you may be ready to go. There may be elements, just a few small elements, there may be some larger gaps in your work, and we will design support packages to enable people to make the progress they need to gain accreditation. You'll be able to find out more about that, in particular the group learning and further webinars and events and conferences in the next couple of months. So again, another reason to sign up to our mailing list, because that's where it will be, or keep coming back and checking on the website as well. So we are going to move into the chat now. So if I could ask our the Q&A, our panelists to turn their cameras and audio on, we will get started with that. But do keep submitting your questions if you have them. That would be great. We've got quite a lot, so it's good. Plenty of time to have them as well. So the first question, and actually there's a few along this line, is about definitions of urban and who is able to apply for this. So Emily, I think it probably makes sense if this first one is for you. So, yeah, is there a definition of urban and or a minimum size that of place that we're looking for in terms of applications for the accreditation scheme?
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. So no, we've purposefully not defined the size either by geography or population size. Um, we know that kind of 80% of the population lives in towns or cities across the UK, and those are the places that we know need nature the most, for people and nature itself and for climate resilience. So that's why we've taken a very strong urban stance on this. The program is called Nature Towns and Cities. So um, there will be an option to become a nature borough as well, conscious of London boroughs not being able to apply as one whole city. We were talking about when this was being designed, whether towns want to join up with neighbouring towns or the boroughs want to join up with neighbouring boroughs. So that is also an option. What we're aiming for is kind of at scale change. So urban areas, whether they're one town, one city, or a group of towns, or a couple of boroughs next to each other, that can demonstrate that they've got the strategies and the vision for that at scale change, that represents the geography that they're applying for, it is the most important bit, really. So if a village was to apply, we'd probably have a conversation with them and say this isn't really what we're aiming for, because it doesn't deliver the outcomes at the scale that we desire. But yeah, we've purposefully not set any parameters around the size of town or city that can apply. Um, there were a few other questions about whether it has to be the local authority or whether it can be uh, someone outside of that. So there are some FAQs and some guidance on the website that covers this kind of thing, where we say the local authority probably does need to be involved, but doesn't necessarily need to be the lead applicant. So things like getting strategies signed off and having the kind of senior support and buy-in of a big policy holder and a big landowner in the town or city is quite important, but it doesn't necessarily, the drive to become accredited doesn't necessarily have to come from the local authority itself. Hopefully that's answered your question in a very vague way.
Thanks, Emily. We've got a couple more. So one specifically about county level applications. So could we have county level applications that cover a number of towns?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Again, if it was to demonstrate the change and the desire for change in an urban context that we would be able to see, then I don't see why not. It could really well align with things like LNRS, and just pull out the urban element of that. Um, yeah, so it might be a bit more difficult to facilitate and to get agreement, especially across different political boundaries. But yeah, if you're already working in partnership with different towns and cities at a county level, then that would be fantastic. And kind of bring in some of that urban fringe as well, kind of merging into some of the rural areas as well.
Yeah, great, thank you. And similarly, it's not just upper tier local authorities. It can be from either and also combined authorities, should they desire. Excellent,
So
thank you.
the criteria, hopefully, when you read it, is it can be applied to lots of different contexts. So lots of different sizes. We tested it with some small towns, some district councils, and some unitary authorities. So it should be able to be applied to lots of different sizes and scales.
And we have got one question about a regional application. That probably is too big, isn't it? I think we would feel it
Mm,
would not quite enable the level of uh, evidence wouldn't quite work with the criteria. But
mm.
two neighbouring unitaries or two towns within a county or something like that, as we've just said. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and then you would become, if it was, I don't know, Derby and Leicester, you would say Derby and Leicester officially a nature town, cities. I don't know. We can badge the logo accordingly.
Great, thank you. I'm just quickly scrolling through to check whether we've got anything else on some. Could you just talk to us a little bit about cost, actually, Emily? We've had a question about whether there's a cost to this accreditation.
Yeah, of course. So it's being piloted as a free scheme. Hopefully it stays that way. But yeah, there's no fee involved in applying. It is purely people's time and kind of effort behind the scenes to do the work. So when you come to apply, there's no fee. Um, yeah, it's a bit different to things like Green Flag and Building with Nature in that sense. And I didn't actually mention how long you become accredited for. So you would receive the award for 3 years, and we'd be back in touch after a year to just ask for a quite light touch progress update on how things are going. But hopefully we talk to you regularly. You're part of the network, and we're well aware of how things are progressing by that stage.
Great, thank you. Could I ask uh, Drew just to come on screen? So we've got a couple of questions around whether there's any updates on the grant application process, and in particular the expressions of interest.
Sure. Yeah, I saw there was a question in there about, I think we said we'd let people know by the 31st, and we are on track to do that. So I think as anyone who submitted an expression of interest for the capacity building grant would know, we had a lot of interest. I think, more than we were expecting, and it was brilliant to see. So we've been going through the process, and a group of people will be asked now to progress to full application stage. Obviously, that's going to be disappointing for quite a large number of organisations, but one of the things we really wanted to stress is that there is still a huge amount of free knowledge and expertise and things like accreditation that we will hope people will really get involved with. So, I'm sorry, I would love to be able to fund far more projects than we can, but we have a set budget, and we worked really hard to try and pick out those places that we think will really benefit from the capacity building grants. So yeah, everybody should know hopefully by I think the 31st.
Great, thank you. And whilst we've got you, Drew, could I just ask you to outline the interaction between the grant and the accreditation? So we've had a question which asks, is this a requirement of the grant and the Nature Towns and Cities grant and or any future schemes? The question doesn't mention heritage funds, but I'll give you that parameter, given that you can't speak for other funders.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, obviously speaking from the Heritage Fund. So yeah, the capacity building grant provides an ideal opportunity for places to really get their teeth stuck into accreditation. It will provide you with the capacity and resources to hopefully really engage with the accreditation process. There is no requirement that if you receive a grant, you have to go for accreditation. We would hope that people would see that there's an obvious connection between the two. Also to say that generally, and it's true across everything that Heritage Fund funds, we don't use accreditation as a criteria for future investment. But obviously, if you're accredited, one of the key things that does is to help to show us how you might be prioritizing projects that you're coming to us for. It helps to show that there's a reduced risk in investment in that, hopefully you've got senior level support, and that accreditation, even at the foundation level, will demonstrate that. So it isn't a criteria that we will take into account, but I can see that, it's a very useful thing for you to be able to tell us that you've been accredited or you're going through the accreditation process, because that helps to reduce the risk for us as an investor. And I'm sure that, that will be true of many other investors who will look at accreditation as a really key indicator in thinking about whether a place is a good place to invest or not.
Great, thank you. Just one more question, perhaps with a Heritage Fund policy hat on this time rather than grantees. Um, quite a question, which is there anything to stop cities in Scotland using the accreditation criteria, the self-evaluation tool, the tracker to help strengthen green space strategies?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think what has been absolutely wonderful is that Natural England have provided this for places to use for free. And that applies in the nations as much as it does in England. One of the things that well, obviously, as I think Victoria said at the start, we've been working really closely with the nature agencies in all 4 nations. So NatureScot, NIEA and NRW have been really keen to hear how accreditation is being developed, and Emily has taken time out to talk them through the process that we're looking at for England. It's very much on those agencies to decide whether they want to take accreditation forward in those nations. There is definite interest and enthusiasm. I think there are obviously limits around resources, particularly probably in Wales, where I think some people know NRW is having a pretty tough time. But certainly it's our intention to share all that knowledge and learning with the nations, which Natural England have been doing. And I would love to see accreditation rolled out as a UK-wide process, obviously delivered within those individual nations to their particular needs and demands. But yeah, we're definitely trying to help, and I think it would be really helpful. And I saw there was a note in there, I think it was from Helen from Dunfermline. If you think accreditation is going to help you, then please do pass that message on up to NatureScot and to NRW and NIEA as well. We're really keen to be very supportive and see this as a UK-wide thing ultimately.
Great. Thank you, Drew. I think the next suite of questions are probably back with you, Emily, but I might ask others to come in and give us their take on things as well. Um, the first one I had was, could you give us a bit of an indication about how, from your perspective, how you think the accreditation and the LNRS process will work together, or how they fit together? You mentioned it in your presentation, but just a little bit more on that. And Jana, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that from your perspective, in the Dorset one, just to give you a bit of a pre-warning, but optional.
Yeah, thank you. I will pass on to Jenna for her perspective. But it is mentioned, so kind of broader policies, strategies are mentioned in the criteria. We don't want things to kind of sit in silos. We need things to be talking to each other, and for green infrastructure to be embedded in lots of different strategies, policies, things like your LNRS, but also things like housing strategies, development strategies. So seeing it as really kind of integral and embedded across lots of different work areas, I think is the only way to kind of add that resilience and make it easier to deliver. But yeah, on the LNRS specifically, we chose not to include it as a thing to be accredited, mainly because some places don't have the power to kind of decide what's included. So if it's being written at a broader regional scale, and a small town can point towards where urban or where their town is mentioned in that LNRS, then fantastic. But if they haven't been able to influence that in that way, or it's already been written, we didn't want to kind of hold places back if that was the evidence we were asking for. So yeah, they're well aligned, but we're not specifically asking to see your local nature recovery strategy as evidence. But if you want to kind of refer to parts where urban or your town or city is mentioned, then that would be brilliant to see it embedded. Jana, I'll
Great.
hand over to you for a
Thank you.
more local perspective.
I would, I would just agree with everything that you've said and say that, I listed out the strategic work that we've done over the last few years, and a lot of that is just about really understanding what you've got and where you can make the most difference. For us, we came out with quite a lot of conclusions around our neighbourhood spaces, that they weren't spaces that we were able to prioritise using different financial pots, and so they've been areas that we've been able to prioritize, and we can pass all that information, I suppose, and learning and the priorities that we've agreed locally in along to colleagues in Dorset who've taken the lead in writing our LNRS. The mapping's been really important. We haven't had to do that again. So I suppose I've seen them working quite hand in hand, and all the different bits of strategy hopefully informing other bits of work. It's quite difficult to sort of stay on top of and not start contradicting yourself. And I suppose no doubt we will have done in some small ways. But yeah, they've worked quite they've worked quite well together, and they've enabled us, I suppose. So the green infrastructure strategy we developed in 2020, and we're developing our LNRS now. So we've had that opportunity with the fortunate timing that we've had there to take the learning from that big piece of work for us, and inform our LNRS with that. So yeah, they've worked reasonably well together, I would say.
Great, thank you, Jana. We've got a question about is there a limit to how many cities will be able to gain accreditation? And is there an expectation that places will move from level 1 to level 2? Any deadlines? How
Yeah.
frequently do you need to renew? Though, if you could take those questions as a bundle, Emily, that would be marvellous.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no limit to how many towns or cities will gain accreditation. The ultimate goal is to deliver outcomes. So if every town or city across the UK was kind of prioritizing nature, then they would all become accredited, and everyone would be living in much kind of healthier, more vibrant towns and cities. So that is the ultimate goal. We don't really know what to expect in terms of the rate of demand for places coming forward. We would love to get lots of places at least foundation accredited this year. The expectation is that you would do level 1 and then level 2. So we would be looking to assess your evidence against foundation before you could progress onto the advanced level. The time it takes to kind of reach that level is also going to massively vary. So some places we expect are quite ready to apply for foundation. They've got lots of evidence already and things in place. Others might be a bit nearer the start of their journey. They might be wanting to spend 6 months working on their vision and their strategy before they're ready to apply for accreditation. So yeah, it just varies. There's no cutoff to apply. It's just as and when you feel your place is ready, you can make your application. You can register. You can register as a lead applicant and sign up to the portal and be uploading things as you go. You can come back to things and add more notes in, and then once you decide you're ready and you've met all the criteria, you can submit. So the decision-making panels will be held regularly throughout the year. So we're hoping it's quite a quick turnaround between you submitting and getting your decision back. But it does depend on whether we've had a large number in that time period, or the time it takes to assess before the next panel. But we're hoping kind of 2 months maximum between you submitting and you getting your decision. Obviously a little bit longer if the assessors decide some evidence is missing and come back to you and say we'd like to see more evidence of X, Y, and Z. Yeah, but I think all of the answers to these more technical things should be on the website in the FAQs or in the guidance. But yeah, all great questions, and there'll be lots more detail about how you actually apply and the process in March when that all launches.
Fabulous, thanks. We've probably got time for 2 more questions, I think. So, we've had a question about the relationship between accreditation and sort of smaller community and voluntary sector organisations. I wonder if you could say a little bit about how a small charity might fit into the scheme, and some of the asks in the criteria around that aspect.
Yeah, definitely. So when we were testing this last year, we did speak to a number of voluntary sector organisations, some larger national ones and some really local ones. And they kind of fed back to us that this is going to be really powerful for them in their local areas, because it kind of it strengthens their involvement in that they are then involved in a broader vision. They're not against the local authority. They're working in very meaningful partnerships to deliver a shared vision. So it should strengthen their agenda. It should hopefully align some priorities and enable places to work towards one shared vision. Hopefully adds in some capacity in a kind of place-wise way of doing things. So it's not just the local authority trying to do things and the voluntary sector trying to do similar things. The kind of capacity there could be shared a little bit better and thought of more efficiently. Yeah, so it's hopefully going to be very attractive for voluntary sector groups in either strengthening their delivery or in getting more involved in the strategic side of things and setting visions and being involved in that way. So we know that some are working with smaller community groups who just want to do delivery, and we're not pushing partnership agreements and things on them if that's not what they are set up to work in. So we want kind of delivery to continue. We don't want everything to pause while places are going for accreditation. Delivery is very important alongside all of this.
Great, thank you, Emily. Still, I've got a little bit of time, so try and get through the remaining questions we've got in the Q&A. It's brilliant you've had so many. Could you just tell us a little bit about how this complements both building with nature and also green flag has been mentioned? They've been mentioned by two different questioners, but if you could just take those together, Emily, that would be marvellous. And maybe
Yeah,
Drew, if you wanted to come in on that afterwards as well, that would be great. Thank you.
yeah. So when we started this, we were conscious that there were some other awards and schemes and accreditations out there. Our kind of USP in this space is that at scale approach. So we know that Green Flag exists. We know that's for quite site-specific projects and more of a quality mark. We wanted to plug a gap really in encouraging partnerships to take a very strategic at scale urban approach to this and accredit things like their visions and their strategies and also delivery plans and projects and things as well, and be a bit more long term. So awarding places for 3 years rather than annually, so that you've actually got some time to progress and get things off the ground. We have spoken to Building with Nature and Green Flag along the way. So when the Natural England Green Infrastructure Framework was designed, it was very much designed to align with Building with Nature standards. You will recognise that they more or less say the same thing. So yeah, we were very conscious in kind of making sure they were aligned. We have members of my team that sit on Building with Nature's board, so we are in close conversation with them. Green Flag as well. I'll probably pass on to Drew about that, but yeah, Victoria and I have had conversations with MHDLG and Green Flag about how these can complement, and hopefully places kind of become a nature town and city and have Green Flag awarded places within them as well. It's kind of all just boosting the urban nature agenda and adding more layers.
Great, thanks, Emily. Drew, do you want to add anything to that?
Emily's done a great job in covering that. Other than I was just going to add, obviously, Green Flag has been incredibly important to the Heritage Fund over the years. We see it as a great way of supporting our past investments in single historic parks. And I think, hopefully the investment, and I think it's £1 billion over the 30 years that the Heritage Fund's existed, has meant to, a large number of parks now in better condition and lots with Green Flag. So we see Green Flag as incredibly important and hopefully will continue to be incredibly important. But as Emily said, this is filling a gap. This is about, driving investment. It's about the whole green space infrastructure of a place. So we see the two schemes as really compatible, working well together and complementary. And as Emily said, we've spoken to both MHCLG and are also in conversations with Green Flag as well. So we don't see them as competing. And in fact, Green Flag said to us they were really supportive of this approach as well, because it's about driving investment. So I don't see any problems, hopefully.
Great, thank you, Drew. We've just got 2 minutes left, so I think we'll draw the Q&A to a close. I'd like to say thank you very much to all of our contributors and panelists for your time this morning, and thank you all for coming and for submitting so many great questions. I'm glad we had a little bit more time to get through almost all of them. We would love to hear from you about whether you found this really useful or not. You can do that again via Menti, or you can that would be our preference. If you prefer to, you can put it into the chat. But yeah, please do let us know. The code is on the screen now. To access it, or you can use the link. We'd love to talk to see you starting to think about your criteria and using the self-evaluation tool and the tracker, and of course to hear from you again when the application process is open. But do drop us a line if you have any questions about the accreditation criteria or about any of the resources we've made available. Other than that, I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to receiving your applications from March. Thanks very much, everyone.